Welcome to another tactic guide by MMO Zone. This time we'd like to introduce a bit of the Northrend Beasts of the Crusader's Coliseum instance to you. The battle is split up into 3 phases, each phase presenting its own boss. In the third phase, you'll face off with Ice Howl. In the first phase, however, you encounter Gormok, who has 3 interesting abilities for you. Impale, for instance, which tanks will have to deal with. As soon as a tank has this effect on him stacked up to 4 times, another tank should taunt Gormok away. So you'll need 2 tanks for this boss. Keep taunting away as necessary. Another ability you'll have to watch out for is the ability to throw snowballed Vassals. As you can see here in the target, they come out in 30-second intervals. They latch themselves onto your backs, onto the backs of other players, who are then rendered unable to cast spells or do pretty much of anything, really. It's a sort of a permanent interrupt, if you will. So it's very important to kill off these snowballed Vassals as soon as possible. Doesn't matter whether the victim is a melee or a caster, killing these critters is a top priority. The third interesting ability, as you can see here in the lower left, covered by that grid, is the fire that just hovers there. It would be pretty wise to avoid these, as they pretty much dish out immense damage if you just stand there. Yeah, so in summary, make sure not to get Impale stacked on your tanks more than 4 times. Switch to the other tank and taunt him away. As soon as that tank gets 4 stacks of Impale, switch again. And just keep going back and forth like that. Otherwise, kill the kobolds and stay out of the fire. That's pretty much it for the first phase. This boss isn't all that hard. As you can see, we're holding our own, and we hope you'll be able to do the same thing. We've got him at about 10% or less right now, so the boss drops pretty quickly and doesn't have any other abilities that we need to worry about. And there he goes. So, we are now in phase 2 with Acid Maw and Dreadscale. One of these worms is a poisonous worm that sprays poison, big surprise there, onto other players, also causing poison dots damage over time, in case you didn't know that for some reason. The other is a fireworm, casts AoE flames in the shape of a cone directly in front of itself. Notice off to the right the toxic clouds, which should be avoided obviously. Generally, Acid Maw should be killed off first, as one has fewer dots to deal with in the second half of the battle. Another thing to note is that Acid Maw sometimes infects players with a special dot called Paralytic Toxin, which causes damage during the course of the whole battle. Players infested with this dot should move to another player who is infected with Burning Bile, as taking damage from Burning Bile will purge the effects of Paralytic Toxin. That was pretty much it for these mobs. The AoE flame that Dreadscale casts is not as deadly as it seems. Here we can see an example of someone being infected by Paralytic Toxin. The player turned green and is advised to walk towards someone who has the debuff Burning Bile. As soon as one of those worms gets killed off, the other gets enraged and deals 50% more melee damage than before, which is not as deadly as it might sound. Here we so he's pretty much underground. As you can see, they keep burrowing in and out. Make sure you stick onto the right target, don't confuse them. As with the first boss, as soon as you know how these 2 operate, they're not all that difficult to deal with. As with any boss, really. there goes one. As we can see, the other one is trying to run away in a last-ditch attempt to win the battle. So once he's killed, the last phase begins, where we face off versus the boss, who is actually supposed to be the first boss. So we're in phase 3. Oh, looks like we forgot about the other one. Oh, never mind. So now we're in phase 3 versus Ice Howl. This is actually a pretty fun encounter. He has 3 interesting abilities, one of which is an AoE knockback. Another is Massive Crash, which stuns and knocks back all players in the immediate vicinity of Ice Howl. Another one of his abilities is Arctic Breath, which he will use on the tank or any other players in the immediate vicinity. Just try to spread out as much as possible. Right, so this is the 3rd ability we're seeing now. There we go. He throws all the players to the edges of the area and singles out one target and charges him head-on for massive damage. Be sure to dodge. He will knock himself senseless for a few seconds, so make sure to take the time to blast him good. It's pretty much the perfect opportunity to just deal a lot of damage. There's that Arctic Breath we were talking about before. He's about to do his Massive Crash again, which you will see in a minute. There we go. As you can see, he's about to knock himself senseless yet again. Notice how he gives you enough warning by way of just taking a few steps back before he charges. It's pretty much the perfect opportunity to just pick him apart. There's that Arctic Breath again. This was our 2nd try in this same evening. As you are about to see, it was successful. Which isn't a surprise, the way he seems to knock himself out several times. There we go again. Notice how he moves back a few steps and then charges. He hits himself in the head, is stunned, and that is pretty much the pattern he uses. Once you realize the simplicity of his attacks, it's actually very easy to get rid of. And take a look at those items. Level 245 items. Pretty nice. Hopefully our guide was useful to you. Maybe you were able to wean a few tips out of it. And yeah, have fun out there and good loot.